Well, last week we told you about the governor's new order requiring churches to cut singing out of services to cut down on possible coronavirus transmission through saliva droplets. Well, now an Escondido-based group is pushing back to challenge that ban. Joining us now to talk about this is Dean Broyles, Chief Counsel for the National Center for Law and Policy. Thanks so much for joining us.
It's great to be with you.
So can you explain your objections to the ban and your legal grounds?
Sure. For millions of Californians, it's simply essential to regularly meet together for worship. And that right's been infringed for several months now, but now we've started to open up as churches and religious houses of worship again. So that's a good thing. But worshiping through singing and chanting is an essential part of worshiping God. And under our Constitution, the state simply does not have the authority or jurisdiction to dictate the manner or mode of worship to the church.
So it seems that one of the issues that we've heard from health experts over the last few weeks is the difference in risk between possible indoor transmission from talking or yelling or singing versus outdoor transmission, which we saw with people who might have been gathering for some of these protests. Have you heard of churches trying to hold service outside to potentially reduce risk of transmission and then being allowed to maybe do more?
Yes, there's several churches who've been meeting outside to mitigate the risk of transmission to keep their people as safe as possible. The importance here is looking, when we claim discrimination, you have to look at comparable secular locations where gathering is permitted. So a good comparison to churches meeting indoors would be, for example, indoor dining locations. In those locations, there's no limit on the number of people who can gather. There's no capacity restrictions for meeting. And once diners sit down, they can take their masks off and talk and chant or sing, or whether it's happy birthday or something else, if they want to. There's no similar restrictions in indoor dining. And so to put these restrictions on the church and tell a pastor or a church that they can't sing even with masks on is treating churches in a discriminatory manner when compared to similarly situated secular locations. So at a minimum, the Constitution requires that churches be treated no worse than secular comparable locations. In this case, that's certainly not happening in California.
Now, I'm sure, as you know, just this week, the county ordered indoor dining to close or to move it outside in compliance with the state's new order regarding that. Have you heard from parishioners about their concerns? Are any of them worried about being inside churches and singing and the possibility of transmitting the virus?
Yeah, certainly people who are elderly or have other underlying health conditions may not want to come back to church in person for a while until the danger passes or subsides. But for younger individuals or healthier individuals or less at risk individuals, coming to church and worshiping and singing with masks on is not a very dangerous proposition. I mean, it's no more dangerous than going to Costco or Walmart or any place where it's actually physically impossible to social distance because of the narrow aisles. So to really target churches to say that they're super spreaders or they're somehow places where people get sick more than anywhere else, they're greater danger is just simply not accurate. And most pastors obviously don't want to endanger their people. They want them to come and worship together and worship God. But religious practices for millions of Californians are really essential. So if you give people the option of not worshiping God together or having a slight risk of COVID or even a risk of death, I think a lot of Californians would choose to come together and worship God and not be indefinitely banned from either meeting together or singing in a safe manner with masks on and social distancing. And so I think if we're gonna look at this virus, we've got to look at it in context and not overreact and shut down all of our lives and ruin our economy and ruin our religious practices. A lot of churches have been really hurt by this and other religious houses of worship. And this simply can't continue. If this is a new normal, we need to figure out ways to healthily engage and meet together going forward.
We only have a few seconds left. Legally, what's next?
Well, there's some existing lawsuits that we're involved with, and there's other lawsuits that are going to be filed in the next few days or weeks challenging the worship ban, not only on behalf of places where people worship by singing, but many of the Orthodox traditions and Jewish traditions worship by chanting and reciting scriptures out loud. And so those restrictions are pretty severe, not only for evangelical Christian churches, but for other faith groups. And so for Orthodox Jews, for example, they can't even meet if they can't chant. And so this is a severe restriction on a lot of people of faith in California.
Dean Broyles, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. We appreciate it.